And so within this context, I mean, we've spoken about different flavors of different metals, different flavors of commodities and natural resources, energies, EV, etc. I mean, each style of investing has this favorite pattern that they look for. So Buffett Munger style looks for a great brands with pricing power and huge moats. In natural resources, in your experience of last 25 years, what is the ideal dream investment look like? That would be great to hear. And if you couldn't give an example also, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. So I'll do it on a macro level for what I'm looking at for a specific commodity. And then I'll give a company specific allocation because it's different. You know, when I look at when I look at commodities, and I love the setup, and I think tin is in this setup where you have a relatively niche market with very strong and growing demand, very inelastic. There aren't a lot of different things that can do what tin does in soldering for semiconductors. The only thing you can really replace it with is lead, which is now a distinctly non-ESG kind of metal. So that's not a good choice. You need to have sort of a market that's been misunderstood for a long period of time and been out of favor. So no one's bothered to look for a new tin supply because the dynamics of that market are really interesting. You had these massive deposits that were developed, big alluvial clay deposits that were really cheap and really easy to develop in Indonesia and Malaysia and those sorts of areas. And at one point, that was 60% of global tin supply was from those 2 or 3 countries.
Whoa, okay.
That's shrunk to 1/3.
Okay.
And so you made up the difference by pulling down these stockpiles. And some of these stockpiles dated back to like the Cold War with the US versus Russia and the stockpiling of tin to make sure that we could develop the electronics that we did. We built this massive tin reserve, you know, back in the 70s and 80s that we just, you know, we just started running it down, and we've been running it down ever since. The Global Tin Council also built up a big reserve that was, you know, a big overhang back in the early 2000s. So you had this artificial suppression to prices that led nobody to do any exploration. And then all of a sudden you've got, you know, Intel and Taiwan Semi and all these companies saying massive, you know, $15 billion new fabs going up all over the world. What are they going to glue them all together with? You need the tin. The other few things that I really like is, you know, in your iPhone, there's about 4 cents worth of tin.
Whoa, okay.
So how much could tin go up before it impacts whether you buy your iPhone? It can go up a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, tin could easily double or triple. And no one would blink because the end products produced by what they are is it's just you know, they're too expensive. There's too much. It's like uranium. You don't, you know, it's the cost of uranium in a nuclear reactor is de minimis relative to the capital cost of building it. So, you know, those are elements that I really like. Cherry on top would be when you, you know, have very few ways to express it from an equity standpoint. Because the fewer number of vehicles that you can express a given view in, you know, the more likely that you're going to be in the one that people really feel like they need to be in. So, you know, they're really, and I can't really discuss them because I'm involved in both of them right now, but any of your listeners could just, you know, look up on, you know, publicly traded tin producing companies, and they're like 3. So it's that shortage of, you know, whether it was LNG back in the late 90s or whenever you have a shortage of ways to play something, you know, that's where, and it's a good story, it's got a great narrative around it. That's where I've always made the most money.